had told me, yeah, you need this one part here, this one that you drill the hole through and all. It was $216. I was like, well, now I'm not even buying it from them, because what I'm doing is getting the part number from them and going to Summit, because you can actually get a better deal through the distributors than you can through the manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
So $216, the price just went up. I'm like, what the hell? So I call Summit, and I spoke with this really wonderful woman named Tracy. I'd spoken to her before because I had a bunch of returns in the last couple months, and she verified. Is that you, Keith, with the crickets?
No, it's me.
You? What do you got?
Yeah.
Crickets?
Yeah, your pet
I'm in the
crickets.
garage. They come in everywhere.
Okay, I get them in the basement too, but yeah, usually around this time of year. So she gives me a part number. The first part number that I saw, that was $159. So I said, okay. I said, so what's the difference? So luckily I had these instruction sheets. So I start looking at it quickly as I'm talking to her, and I see, okay, the one, you had to flip it over, drill. I had no problem with that. The other one, the cheaper one, it says you take the horn wire and you run it through the channel on the pressure ring to bring it to the other side. And I said, okay, I can do that too. And I ordered that one. And then I started thinking about it, and I said, I bet you I know what happened. I bet you that was their first version. And guys were not running it through the channel. They were probably pinching it because they weren't reading, because let's face it, guys don't read directions. Car guys don't read directions, right?
We don't need directions.
I'm the only moron. I used to write directions, so I realized that there's good information in there. So I think guys were probably installing it wrong, pinching the wire. The horn was going off because now it grounded, and they were sending it back, calling customer, tech support, and they made a version 2 where you drill the hole and bring it around. And I said, okay, we'll go. That's my theory, at least. So now I got to wait, and of course, this is the one part that's not coming in from Ohio. It's coming in from Vegas.
Oh,
in a couple of days, I'll be able to put a steering wheel on the car and actually drive it, because the electric fan is working now with the new controller. The temperature sensor is working great. All that whole project ended up being fine after, a couple iterations. That wasn't a one-shot deal. I don't have one-shot deals these days. So
everything's a project.
It's projects inside of projects.
Yeah. I'm surprised that steering wheel or the steering column rather, didn't come the way every other GM car comes.
I don't know why they do it that way. And the guy on the phone couldn't answer that question either. Otherwise, it is a bolt-in GM column once you buy the shaft and the installation kit. But you know what? Let's do this. Let's get the man on the stage, the man of the hour, Mr. Carl Anthony. Carl.
Hey, fellas, how are you? Sorry, I'm a couple minutes late.
That's quite all right.
It's always an issue of getting my camera to work or who knows what. So good to see all you guys. How is everybody?
Excellent. Good to see you. Just saw you a few days ago, and the guys might have actually been able to hear you if they listened to the show. Yeah.
I listened on Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Good to see you, Jim. Yeah.
Yeah, my best is I figure we'll drag you in while you still remember who we are, and you still haven't forgotten us. So
yeah, no, not at all. It was good to be back on the air on Sunday. Had just a ton of fun with you guys. That hour that we're on just flies.
Oh, I know. And I didn't get to apologize to you on air. I like to keep you in a tighter rotation, but it just so happened that Chris and I, over the last couple of months, we had, I made a couple trips down south. Chris had a trip he had to do. We missed a bunch of days. We were actually out of the studio.
Yeah.
So it just, life was getting in the way, and we just had to do other things. So, we're getting back on track.
Yeah. No, it was a lot of fun. I couldn't believe. I mean, the catalytic converter story was funny, and I've told people before, just being part of that show. I said it's like I come on and then I go away for a while, but then there's always some kind of saga or adventure in between.
Yeah.
And this latest one was the catalytic converter, or something with the FJ or. So
the FJ, luckily I was just explaining to Jim the problem I was having with my Pontiac. I decided to do a little kind of a refresh on the car. where I forget what I even started with. I ended up buying this, and I did it steering column, tilt column, because I had column issues. I really needed to rebuild my column. And I said, why don't I just get a tilt column? It'll give me four-way flashers. And it was just problem after problem. They said it was a complete bolt-in, and then I come to find out I need the adapter. I need a double D shaft, I need a new rag joint, and I went through 3 rag joints. I mean, it just dragged on forever. So I went into the interior, gutted that. I wanted to do a carpet change. Change my carpet color. And I bought a new set of seats for the car. The seat brackets were wrong. They had to go back. They were bad. And now, like just yesterday, I get to the point of putting the steering wheel back on to be done, only to find out I need a steering wheel adapter for my Did It, which I just had to order today. So I wasn't surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, I just laugh at this point, and when you talk to people, say, okay, that says it's a complete bolt-in, everything included, right? Oh, yeah, it's a complete bolt-in for your car.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. So rarely ever is.
Yeah.
There's Matco Man Brian.
Hey, guys.
Good to see you, buddy.
Good seeing you. Good seeing you guys.
Ray, just don't use the rag joint.
What, just weld it?
Oh, that's what I said.
My 66 doesn't have a rag joint in it, so, hey.
Well, that is a safety feature, actually, so.
I know, Ray. I know. Say, mine's still got the single pot master cylinder on it, but that car's getting 4-wheel disc brakes, so.
You won't have that anymore.
Everything.
Yeah, you won't have
No,
that.
the Jeep's like one of the an upgrade for the S10s is you get the Jeep shaft and it doesn't have any rag joint. It's just like universals on the end.
Really?
Both ends. Yeah.
Wow.
It's still.
They have a collapsible end. That's probably like the rag joint part, though. It's
but there's no rag joint. It's just
there's no rag joint, but it's got a collapsible end.
Right.
Those things over a period of time they'll freeze up though, and you'll get a funny feeling, and you'll think that you have a bad rack or power steering. It's real common on Fords where people will throw in about 3 racks and 2 power steering pumps, and they don't understand why they have a problem, and that shaft will bind, and it won't release or collapse when it's under load.
Yeah, the same thing on my RV. It's like it's almost like a 90-degree. It comes down at like a 45 or so. It's a mess. It's really bad angle, and it breaks.
What kind of RV is it, Keith?
It's a 76 GMC motorhome.
Class A, Class B, pusher.
It's from what was that movie?
Yeah, Stripes, right?
Yeah.
Classic. 150.
Right? The GMC. Yeah, those are actually very cool. That was at a GM engineering program that is front wheel drive Tornado. That car, that thing, like the Edsel, was so ahead of its time. It's not fun.
You could see where they took just like the front end, the front frame part of the Tornado, and put it there, and then they just ran rails all the way to the back, straight all the way to the back, just to put the rest of the RV body on there.
Yeah, Carl, are you still in Michigan?
Yes, yep. Still in Michigan. Still in the Detroit area. As we talked about on Sunday, my job has changed. I've moved on from Automoblog, just had some new opportunities. But yeah, I'm still in Michigan, and still doing my thing here in the auto industry.
Still making dirty memories, Jim.
Make sure to commit that to memory, because I know we all think when we take a call, we've known him for so long as Automoblog, and it just rolls off the tongue. Oh yeah, Carl from Automoblog. Yeah. So
and thinking of all the bad things I had to say about electric vehicles and
autonomous cars.
Yep.
Well, the one question I had for you, Carl, is Tubby's still around?
Stubbies.
Tubbies.
Oh, Cubbies. Oh, Cubbies. Yeah. They're all over up here.
Yeah, that's a great. Because Fago is from Detroit.
Yep.
And it's hard to find. My father is from Richmond, which is right outside of Detroit.
Sure.
And I grew up partially in Michigan, partially in Georgia, and love the Rock and Rye, but it's hard to find Rock and Rye outside of Detroit.
Yes, right.
So,
Yep.
although you can mix Red Pop and cola and maybe add a little, what's the cream soda,
Yep.
and you can get close. But like I said, there's just certain things about Detroit that, like I said, Stroh's beer used to be brewed there, and just other Verner's root beer. I mean, not Verner's root beer, Verner's ginger ale.
Yeah, Better Made chips are another one too. And then if you go up north, there's Fudge, like Mackinac Island, and that area is known for
Frankenmuth.
Frankenmuth, yeah, yep.
For the celebrations up there, yeah.
Yeah, and the Rock and Rye is probably the most popular one. So you might go to a grocery store here and you might see a row, and then the Rock and Rye row is out. So even that, I would say, just is the most popular one here. That's what people tend to like. So you might go to Meijer, or you might go to a grocery store, either in the city or like in the surrounding area. And you might go in for a Rock and Rye and they might not have it. So it's still extremely popular.
So speaking of Michigan, Carl, I was just talking to a buddy today who's very influential in the local Oldsmobile club.
Okay.
And we were talking. The 442 I worked on at the shop is coming back into my purview. I got to do some more work on it. And he brought up to me the McCacken show up in your part of the woods.
Okay.
The Muscle Car and Corvette National.
Okay.
And I said, I've always wanted to go to that show. I've heard about it now for about 10 years. We have friends from the show who go, and I've never been there. I said I would, just to see. I'd make a beeline for like the barn find and not drive the cars, the unrestored cars. I said that's that's what I want to see. And he said, really? So he says to me, well, it's going to be the weekend. Could you get away? I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
Well, there's a Sunday. I said, listen. I said, at this stage of my life, at this point in my existence, I'm at the point where if something is significant enough where I need to be there on a Sunday, the radio show has to take a second. It's got to take a second place. I got to do what I got to do.
Sure.
And usually it's family related. But I said, this is something almost bucket list related. And then he said to me, well, would you fly or would you drive? I said, you know what? I'm a driver. I like to drive when I go to North Carolina.
For sure.
As I drive, I said I do the 700 miles in one way, and he says, "Wow," he goes, "Now you're tickling my fancy." I said, "Really?" I guess he doesn't like to fly, so he said, "You think we could pull this off?" I said, "Yeah, I think we could." I said, he goes, "Oh, I don't like to drive. Look, he goes, I can only do like 2 or 3 hours. I can't do 6 or 8." I said, "Listen, I can do the 8.
Yeah,
yeah. I've done 12."
Yep.
I said, "That's kind of my limit." I said, but I could do it. I said, if you could do some, I said, dude, we could tag team. I said, we're there. He goes, well, we'll have to get a hotel. I don't know if we could be on site. We may have to be off site. I said, listen, that's logistics.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. I said, I heard there's a good pizzeria right outside the exhibition hall.
Yep.
So this may actually happen, but I went on their site today to check it out, and they actually have a thing for media credential.
Okay. Well, there you go.
You see, the thing is, though, they say they only want to issue one pass unless you're like a video crew.
Yeah, right.
We're not a video crew. And I can't see coming in on a media pass and my buddy, not.
Yeah, right. Right.
So I got to see if there's going to be a workaround, if I can get, a deal on passes. If not, we'll just have to pay full boat. It's like $80.
Sure.
Hand him a selfie stick and tell him he's your videographer.
Yeah, right.
That's my videographer there.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is the only other thing. Anything you want to do car related events, you better do it, because the way these assholes are acting in all these other places, they're not going to have any of them very soon.
Yeah.
Well, luckily it's inside, so because he said to me, we may see the National Guard. As we pass, I'm going inside,
Well, the bottom line is, even though they didn't do anything at the event, it was leading up to the event down there in Tennessee with the Slam event. And they said that 95% of all the people there didn't even have a car there. It's just that they all took over the gas station. They were all doing burnouts. They were all running up and down the street. They were all causing all this chaos and noise that they actually shut down the event.
That was Pigeon Forge, the Rod Run.
That was the Gatlin thing in Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
Yeah.
And
well, the Rod Run, it's kind of, it's at the
they did that to H2O Fest in Ocean City. They've done all that where they've wiped out all these communities where nobody wants the car guys. And we've had the same problem with our Sunday event for the last, however, 35 years or 40 years that we've met on Sunday morning. The night before, a bunch of bozos tore the parking lot up, and now they don't want us.
Again, I'm thinking, those events that you mentioned are all outside events. This is an indoor event, so hopefully it won't. It won't play that way.
And this is the 23rd or 22nd and 23rd of November.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I got that website up.
Yeah.
Brian, back in the day, squirrels used to get taken care of.
Right.
When they would start that nonsense.
But the problem is the squirrel. Nobody put enough Epsom salt or whatever down on the squirrels because now they're all overpopulated.
Well, they regenerated new squirrels. They got new, a whole nother generation. And Jim, I gotta say, when your crickets kick in, man, they come out of my speakers like ground sound.
Hey, I can't believe my microphone picked them up so much.
Unbelievable. That's phenomenal.
Thank God it's your crickets and not my crickets.
Yeah. I was wondering where they were coming from.
Right.
This looks like a cool show, Ray. I like, and here's the thing, you do say you're like, okay, I miss a Sunday on the air to go to this show, but the next Sunday that you're back, you've got a ton of really great stuff to talk about too.
And Carl, it's a road trip story too.
Yes, which are the best. Yep.
Now I love the road trip.
I do. Yeah. Particularly when you bring a car home in pieces.
You know what? I touched base with my buddy on that because I asked him. I said, "Hey, whatever happened with the guy out in Indiana? Did you go without me? Because he goes to the Kentucky Derby as well, and he was thinking about going to the Derby, jumping up there, and then doing a reverse trip. And I never heard." And he said, no. He goes, no, I never did it. He goes, he's still got the parts. They're still waiting for me. He says, I talk to him all the time. He asks about you, asks how you're doing.
Yeah.
Because at this point, I'm thinking about maybe should I just do a U-ship? Or he goes, well, we're gonna do a fly and drive, get a Tahoe, and we'll just drive it back. I said, well, let me know.
Yeah.
So that's still open. The book isn't closed on that.
Right.
Now he found that car is a 59 Chevy Brookwood two-door wagon. So he didn't want to keep the X chassis. So it was a very well-known company that makes chassis that are very expensive. I forget who it was. But he found another guy in Tennessee now who I think worked at Jake's or Fat Man's or one of the big companies, opened his own company and is making chassis. And he can save about at least $10,000 off the price of what the other guys. So he goes, listen, we maybe have a road trip to Tennessee, to bring this chassis back. I'm like,
right.
All right, well,
yeah,
keep me posted.
Yeah.
Sounds almost like Scott's Hot Rods.
It may be. That sounds familiar. Yeah,
that's what he was. He worked out in SoCal for one of the shops out there, and then moved to Tennessee. And
makes sense.
Does a lot of chassis work and stuff.
That sounds familiar. So, yeah, as long as there's a road trip in there, I'm happy.
Yeah. And you could, Ray, you could apply for a media credential, tell them about the show, and maybe one of the organizers ends up calling in and doing a call-in one day.
I did.
Call-in one Sunday.
I did fill out the form online today, and I sent them stuff and gave my information, phone number, and everything. So we'll see. If they get back to me, I'll see.
Yeah, I love the photos on the site. Like this would be a great way to spend a weekend.
The cool thing is, if you look at like vehicle registration, it says like register your vehicle or bicycle. So I guess they have like a classic bike, like the Schwinn crates and whatever. They must have a whole bicycle thing.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Ray, don't tell me you're going to try to pedal your shovel.
No, no, not. No, no. So, you know, like I said, I have friends that have been at the show for a couple of years, and even Marty Shore has been there for many, many years. And a lot of guys, I missed out on a lot of good things, but Kevin McKay, and a big Corvette guy around here that I know, I'm friends with him. He's actually one of the authors there. They have him listed as an author under the book, for book signing stuff.
Right.
Jim McGee, another author. There's a lot of cool authors if you look under that section.
Yeah. I'm on the display. So they've got, for this year for a display, they got Mopar 426 Hemi B body. Okay. And so it says this year our red carpet invitational display will spotlight the 426 Hemi B body and Plymouth convertibles, among the rarest and most sought after muscle cars ever built. You'll see prime examples of 1966 through 1970 RTs, Roadrunners, GTXs, satellites, and more. So and then they've got, here you mentioned Oldsmobile. So there's a class of 1970 Oldsmobile display. Class of 70 Buick GS, stage 1 invitational. So the 60th anniversary celebration of the 1965 Shelby GT 350. Hosted by Colin Comer. He's a motorbooks writer, isn't he? I think. Yeah.
Where's that show at?
Rosemont, Illinois.
Yeah, Rosemont, Illinois. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the name of that? What's the name of the event? The venue, Carl. They have it listed on their page here.
Yeah. It is. Let me scroll down. Rosemont, Illinois. The Donald E. Stevens Convention Center.
Right, Stevens.
Yeah. 5555 North River Road, Rosemont, Illinois.
Right. So now with all the stuff in the news and all, my wife is saying to me, "Is that really where you want to go?" You know, like with everything going on, I'm like, "Yeah, it's a car show. Come on, car guys." I'm like, "Yeah."
I would go. This looks awesome. You know, and the thing is that I like going to shows like this, and I just like taking pictures. And some of them I post, and some of them I just keep for myself. I just like put them in a little folder on my computer because it's fun to go to these shows, and it's fun to take photos. And I mean, I've got like nothing fancy, like not a fancy camera. I just have one of those gimbal things from my phone, and so you put it in handheld. Then you hit the button and it turns your phone sideways, and then I just walk with the gimbal and just there's a little button up here, and it takes a photo, connects by Bluetooth, and it's I can't even remember how long ago I got that gimbal, probably 8 or 9 years ago, and I love going and taking photos like this of these shows. And I mean, I'll take several hundred photos at a show like this, so even that's fun to do.
Well, I'm old school. I still bring my digital SLR, and I like to do it the old school way.
Yeah.
I was digging through some stuff, Ray, and I found some pictures of a car show in Cobo Hall from the 70s.
Yeah.
Really? The 70s.
Yeah.
Red Fox. What was it? The record. It was the Red Fox Wrecker or something like that.
Okay.
Got pictures of that, a bunch of other stuff.
My buddy Mike, who I work for at the shop, he just sent me a link today to some guy. He met this guy upstate in his other shop, and they got to talking. He's a big GTO guy. He wanted to have his 70, have some work done on it, and he's saying how he's had GTOs since forever. He bought a 64, and he sent me a picture of it, and it said on the what the hell was it on the fender? Let me see what the car was named. And he said it was very popular back in the day. It was in magazines and whatnot. It was a 64. It was called the Stinger. It was like the Stinger, and there was like a champagne glass.
Oh.
That. So this guy's had a lot of cars of history of note, and I'm gonna give him a call tomorrow, line him up as a show guest.
For sure.
Because he goes back to 64 with this stuff. Now he's like 85 years old. So I was like, yeah, it's far be it for me to turn down a good show guest,
Yeah, absolutely.
Carl,
history.
Carl, have you ever heard of a club that's predominantly around the Detroit area, a car club called the Bearing Burners?
The Bearing Burners.
Bearing Burners. I have not. I've not heard of them.
My dad was in that club back in the late 50s, early 60s, and so was Connie Coletta at the same time.
Oh wow. Okay.
He was notorious for taking his fuel car out on Gratiot or 8 Mile Road and running his fuel car down the road and then in Mount Clemens and turning up and hiding it in the glass shop as the cops went by looking for what the hell was all that racket.
Yeah.
You know, there's a good friend of mine, Billy Lynch, Top Fuel dragster driver, owner, and back in the 60s, when he was driving, 50s, 60s, I think in the 70s, he had already become a team of an owner. He was the owner and sponsor. But one of the guys that he worked with that was working on the engine with him, they wanted to do a test and tune. They were going to go out, I think, to Cecil County or I forget, the other big track up there over the weekend, and they want to like at least make it, just see if they could hook it. So the guy was out here on Long Island, and back then, out past where Jim is, even it was just potato country. It was farm country, and not a lot. I think the guy was in Dix Hills at the time. That's where Chappie John was, right where he had lived.
Right.
So he says, "Yeah, bring the car out here." So they go out on the Long Island Expressway, and it was, God's country. They go out there. He's at the guy's house. They unload the car, and they do whatever they were doing until he says, "Come here. There's the service road right by the LIE. We'll bring it up there, right at the end of the road, and you got a perfect, it's like a half-mile run to the next exit." He goes, "You make your hit right there," and he did. He the Top Fuel AAFC rail, boom, doesn't pass. Of course, the cops show up, and the cops were like, we're race fans, and we're like, what the hell? Where did this car come from? Oh yeah, we've been working on it. I was just, I gave him some bullshit story. The cops let him go. They were so into the race car that they, like, all right, get this thing back in the trailer and get it out of sight.
Well, that's like that video I sent you, Ray, where that guy was in New Jersey and they were rebuilding his rail. He was a dragster guy. And when he built it in that his house and at his house, he would do the hits in the neighborhood, and the neighborhood would all line up and watch him do these hits through the neighborhood to see if the car would hook and everything. And that's back in the day. That was crazy stuff.
I got pictures of Billy's rail here somewhere in one of these many.
Brian, did you see that thing I sent to the chat about I think it was Leonard Woods?
No, I haven't had a chance yet.
Where he took and made a 1/2 scale FE.
Oh, that's phenomenal, Vince.
Oh yeah.
And he's also got one. He's doing a like a Boss 429 in 1/2 scale.
Yeah.
And the damn thing runs.
That what? When he was revving that thing, you could hear it. It was like wow, wow, wow. It was sharp and like. And then the guy asked him, "You ever dyno this thing?" He's like, "No, man, I never dynoed it." But he said he did run it up once, and the valves flowed about $5,000, and he blew a motor. He blew one of them up. He said.
Yeah, he said it was working on it, and he had a pair of vice grips on the carburetor, and the vice grips fell off, and when it did, it pinned the throttle, and it blew the motor. It blew it up. It all started. They built like a scale model of a 427 FE, and it's at the Henry Ford Museum. And
really? Okay.
And one of the guys was saying, "Well, does it run?" And he goes, "Well, no. The carburetor looks like a dummy carb." Yeah, and then well, that started. I think it was Leonard Woods thinking, "Can I make a 1/2 scale carburetor?" And then he said he made 9 of them just to see if they could do it. So he's, again, phenomenal. They look like, it looks like what it is, a 1/2 scale FE. It's crazy.
Right.
Yeah, those guys are incredible.
Are any of you guys familiar with Pete Millar? There's a name from the past. Pete Millar was a cartoonist.
Okay.
And an illustrator, and he did drag cartoon magazine. So he had passed, but his daughter is now dealing with his stuff. And Pete Millar actually had Billy Lynch's rail on the cover of Drag Cartoon magazine. I was able to buy this print. That's the rail.
Yeah.
And it's authenticated with a seal, and his signature. But yeah, that was Billy's Top Fuel rail.
So this guy was a cartoonist, Ray?
Well, not Billy. Pete Millar was.
Pete Millar was.
I do remember that name. That name sounds familiar.
He's, well, like I said, this cover was July '64, so he was doing this stuff a long time ago.
Okay.
He's old school. But Billy was his car was that influential and that strong on the circuit that he got on the cover of Drag Cartoon Magazine, which you can't be a slouch.
Yeah.
Billy's, Billy. Once I got to meet him and know him, he says, "Yeah, you're really young. For, seeing my early career, you would have never seen me race. You were too young, unless you were there and you didn't know it." He said, "You would know me because after he gave up the driving shoe, he became a team owner, and he had Al Segrini driving for him, and Billy's car was in the lane, and I did see this race. I think it was in '88 when Kenny Bernstein was driving Top Fuel. He switched over for a season or two, went from funny car to Top Fuel. When Kenny Bernstein broke 300 miles an hour, that was
right.
He broke that mark. It was Billy's car in the loopy lane because Al Segrini lost. Bernstein just smoked him at 300. I think it was 301 or something, or 300.01. I don't know. He broke.
Did he?
That's incredible.
Segrini, he ran a Brute sponsored funny car, if I'm not mistaken.
He may have run a funny car, yeah.
In the late 70s. That name is very familiar. The more I'm sitting here thinking of 70s and 80s fuel cars that I can remember. Al Segrini, yeah.
This was when Al Segrini was driving Billy's later model car. This was later on. That was so Billy Lynch was the team owner. So this was the car that was next to Bernstein when Bernstein broke the 300 mile an hour mark. So,
jeez.
Yeah. So yeah, cool stuff. And then here's
I thought Eddie Hill was the first guy.
Maybe in funny car, but this was Top Fuel.
Eddie was the first. Eddie was the first in the fours. He was the first runner on a 499.
Okay.
So
yeah, I mean, it's all sorts of stats. It's hard to keep them straight after a while. But.
Ray, that was you in that photo, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Chris and me and Billy Lynch.
Yeah.
Because Billy used to do this Cackle Fest every year at a car show, and he'd bring that rail. And he also was part of he worked with the Pacers team that had a alcohol dragster, an altered, and they would light those cars. Look, he would light that Top Fuel car in the parking lot right on 109. And I tell you, man, I remember telling Chris the first time he came, we're standing and we did a little pre-interview with him and all. We did some, some film footage and all. So they're getting ready to light the car. And I said to Chris, we're standing against the building. And I said, "You got ear protection?" He's like, "What do I need ear protection for?" I'm like, "Dude, he's going to light off an 8,000 horsepower Top Fuel nitro burning Top Fuel car." He's like, "Yeah, but we're outside." I said, "Okay." Well, luckily I was smart. I brought a second pair of earmuffs, so I gave them to him. You had to see his face. We're against the wall of the building, and the glass on the wall, the building was shaking. And when they lit it off, he lights it off on
gas,
a gas mixture. And when he switches to nitro, the fumes come out and they just lock your throat right up. Nitro just locks your throat. And Chris was like, why? I'm like, I'm sitting there breathing in. He's like,
Yeah, it's so funny. They start them on like cheap gas, like 87 just cheap gas. They said, believe it or not, they start better on the cheap gas. Yeah, and then they'll switch it to alcohol, and then it sounds nasty. Yeah. And you hear, as soon as he flips that switch to the nitromethane, the thing just starts cackling because it's literally exploding in the cylinders. They said the nitromethane literally explodes. It doesn't, and it's like,
I think on the Motormouth Video YouTube channel, if you go way back, I might have some videos up there from that car starting. I got to see. If I don't, I'll have to find them and put them back up, because that was always a crowd. I mean, he had an In-N-Out Burger car there. He had the Paces alcohol car. He had another Blue Magic, I think it was. He found, because he was still hooked up with all the old drivers, and they would bring the cars out. But his car was always the star. When he lit that thing, it was tight. And he showed me something. He had a little problem one year, and he pulled the valve cover. He thought he had a valve issue. And I'm looking, and I said, wow, I was expecting to see his real exotic valve train on the Hemi. He used 392 Hemis exclusively, because back in the 60s, that's all there was. And then they would bore him out and, do all sorts of crazy stuff to him. I'm like, Billy, what is this? Just like an exhibition motor? What's with the valve train? He goes, no, that was a trick. He goes, we always ran regular rocker arms because we figured if something was going to break, we want the rocker arm to break, not the rest of the valve train. So they became like sacrificial parts.
Right.
I was like, wow, I guess you break it, you learn,
Sure.
Would you rather break a rocker arm or drop a valve?
Exactly.
That's when I had the 289 that I had in my Mustang back in the day. That was when we put that together, the guy said the weak link is going to be the rocker arm. Yeah. He said, because you're going to be spinning this thing at 10,000. He goes, you want the rocker arms, and then the rest of the motor. I can't tell you how many times in the middle of the night I was popping a valve cover off, putting a rocker arm. I had a whole box of rocker arms in the car.
That's like I used to keep my clutch linkage rods in my console. Every time I used to have this a Hemi clutch, a 3-finger Borgenbeck clutch with roller assist, double springs. It was 50 pounds at the pedal. It was a 3,000-pound clutch. I had no business. I still have it. If anybody wants the pressure plate, it's got very little miles on it, but it's got a lot of broken parts behind it. Every time, if I drove the car normally, besides having a real stiff clutch, it was fine. But I'd get into a street race, and the first time I power shifted it, the next time the pedal was like halfway to the floor because the clutch rod would bend. And I kept them pre-adjusted in the console. I'd roll under the car, pull the fork, rip the rod out, put a new one in, get back in and take off again. I had it down to a science.
The back horse back then, I had like a clutch, a 12-inch clutch out of a F750 truck.
Oh, wow.
And that was the clutch I had behind the 289. And the same thing.
Yeah.
Huh?
Same thing. Yeah, I bought a
same thing.
At one point, I went for like a heavy-duty big block Blazer clutch, 12-inch clutch. But
and the on the Z-bar, the rod going through from the pedal to the thing was bent, and I had to take. I got it out, and I took all my parts out of the shed, out to the backpack. I put them back out in the shed to get them off the Mustang. But I used what's the stuff you put in the concrete? Molly, rebar.
Yeah.
Yep. A buddy of mine had this huge ass Lincoln Buzzbox welder.
Uh-huh.
And we cranked that pig all the way up and got that rod and just melted it right into the factory rod.
Wow.
And that kept me from bending that rod.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I
broke a lot of shit.
I did too. And I was telling someone, we were talking about setting up a car. And he said, well, how's your car set up? I said, you know what? I went the opposite direction. I went with a diaphragm clutch now. I said, but the thing I did to make sure everything was right is not only did I index the transmission input shaft into the bell housing so it was dead center. The 5-speeds are critical because the Tremix blow up if you don't. I said, but I have a book here that's how to set up clutch and transmissions, and I took a hard look at the Z-bar, and the ears, the upper and the lower ear, there's actually prescribed angles for that arm to be at rest, and then under tension. So I checked mine, and of course it wasn't in the spec they called for. So what I did is I engineered it so it was, and now my clutch is like you'd almost think it was a hydraulic clutch. It feels so easy and so, but yet it doesn't. It doesn't slip. It just locks up. There's a lot to be said for doing it the right way. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you learn to do it the right way.
But again, like we talked about earlier, I was talking with Jim, guys don't read. So, you can't learn how to do something right if you don't read or someone doesn't show you. So,
Ray, we talked about this on Sunday. I was sharing this story. So this was a week ago tomorrow. So we had an event downtown at the Huntington Place, which is formerly Como Hall. So that's where I've been all this week. But I was part of the battery show this week, which is just exactly what it sounds like. Huge exhibition for electric vehicle batteries and battery testing and validation and all that. But last Friday, we were waiting to set up our display, and it's a lot of hurry up and wait when you're doing stuff like that, because you literally have hundreds of exhibitors across the exhibit hall. Everybody's got their booth space, and everything's in crates and boxed, and so you've got logistics people running around with clipboards, you got forklifts moving, and so it's one of those situations where our crate that we needed with all of our battery test cells in it was sitting behind, another exhibitor stuff. So we were just waiting for people to sign off and move our stuff. And so the forklift operator was there, and he was a guy probably in his late 60s or so, retired from GM. As many people are in Detroit, because they've all done a stint at Chrysler, GM, Ford, or wherever else, and so he does this, just part time to make some extra money. So we're just chatting it up, because we got probably a half hour before some official comes along with a clipboard and says, "Yep, you're okay to move that crate and take that to this booth, and then give these guys that one." So. Naturally, as you do in downtown Detroit, you start talking about cars, and so he starts talking about like how they used to reinforce sheet metal on the line, like at GM when he used to build cars. He's like, surprisingly, he's like, sheet metal in cars, he's like, it's pretty flimsy. He's like, or at least it was back then. He's like, so he's telling about all the reinforcements that they used to do to basically give the sheet metal structural integrity. And he kind of got on that topic because as people were coming by, like as the forklifts were coming by with other like crates and stuff, he was like, I don't know how far they shipped that from whatever city. He's like, but that crate doesn't look very sturdy, And so he was like, there's ways you can reinforce a crate for shipping, even if the wood isn't super thick. And so then he gets on the topic of doing it with sheet metals and cars. And then he's telling me that he bought a retirement car, which is a 2018 Dodge Challenger, and he's like, I can't touch it at all. He's like, I can't work on it at all. He's like, I love the car. He's like, I love driving it, and it was a gift to myself when I retired. He goes, I can lift it up in my garage. He's like, I can change tires. He's like, I can do minor maintenance. He's like, oil changes and stuff. He's like, but I can't get in. He's like, and change the horsepower and the torque. So he goes back, and he talks about some of the early 70s Mopar cars that he had, and just how him and his buddies, just here in Detroit in a garage down an alley, which are very common stories, would just pop the hood, do whatever they wanted to do, change the torque output, change horsepower output, and then shut the hood and then out to Telegraph Road or out to Woodward Avenue, and they would drag race, or they would go up and down and cruise Woodward Avenue, and so I probably talked to him for about a half hour, and I didn't say but like 4 or 5 words, because he was just a wealth of knowledge, story after story of him and his buddies doing this for years. And then he's like, yeah, he goes, in at some point, he's like, everything kind of got modernized. He's like, and then you couldn't do that anymore. He goes, and then he's like, then muscle cars went away. He's like, and then everything went to front drive, He's like, and I was working at GM. He's like, when that happened, he's like, when GM made the switch to do mostly front drive cars. But anyway, I just say all that to say, those stories are out there, and there used to be a time where I think it was much more the norm, where guys would work on cars and would spend a Thursday night, or whatever, doing that, and then get ready to run them on the weekend all over here in Michigan, up and down the roads.
Yeah, that's, I thought it was a much longer conversation by the way you explained it. It sounded like, he had you there for quite a while. But,
yeah, he was just. It was just. He just. It was. It just was. It's just. It's interesting to talk to guys like that. You know.
Oh, yeah.
They should. They just. They're not. They're not. They don't realize that they're doing it, and because I go to a lot of venues like this, or just because I'm in situations where where you tend to meet guys like this. There's a lot of semi-retired guys that you'll run into doing jobs like this, and they drop all kinds of nuggets. So they drop all kinds of like history, where they're like, yeah, we used to go up on Telegraph Road, we used to sit there. He's like, and then he's like, we used to have a lookout and we could see, and then on this section we would go, and then we would race. And he's like, you can't do that anymore. He's like, because they changed the road, and then that shopping plaza is there or whatever. So now you can't do that. So those guys are really fun to like listen to, and
Yeah,
really,
I think
really fun to talk to.
every metropolitan area, we had one here, Connecting Highways. There's a few out here in New York that were very popular back in the day. And big street racing, big money stuff went down, and some of the big guys, I knew a couple of these guys who were big money racers, and that's where they plied their trade. In fact, in high school, I worked in an auto parts store that was right around the block from my high school. So at one point, I go into work and my boss says, "Hey Ray, I want you to meet this guy, Billy. Hey Billy, how are you?" He goes, "Yeah, he's going to be taking over." I'm like, "Taking over? Yeah, he's the new blower. I sold the place to him." I'm like, "What?" I said, "Wow." I said, "Well, I guess I'll still keep coming here and buying my parts." And my the boss says, "Oh no, listen." He goes, "Billy, if you want, you need somebody." So he kept me on, because he goes, "All right, you already know the ropes." He goes, "Yeah, we'll keep you on. You know the place, and we'll decide." So he was another, like, a fast talking, big Pontiac guy out of Maspeth, Queens, which was another big hot street racing venue.
Right.
A lot of guys came out of Maspeth, I should say, and he had a partner who was like the disco boy. New Trans Am, the whole bit. He was into cruising, not racing.
Sure.
But Billy's the guy that's how I got my GTO, because
Okay.
I was driving a '65 Caddy, a Coupe de Ville at the time, and he says to me,
Gangster.
he goes, "Huh?"
You were a gangster.
Yeah, I was a gangster. He says to me, "Listen, if you want to work for me, you're going to stay here, because I think it's about time you got to get yourself a Pontiac. You need a GTO." I was like, "Yeah, cool. Yeah, well, you got one?" He says, "No, but we'll find you one." So he put a deal together, and it was actually for two cars. Mine was the non-running, real cheap one. But that's not what the story's about. I wrote a story about that. He knew this guy, Big Al. Big Al was a notorious street racer out of Maspeth, and the guy was legendary. He used to run small block Chevys and a Camaro, and he was like, he had the combination. Whatever it was, he had it.
Sure.
So this is dead of winter, I think 1977, and it was a cold winter that year. I remember Billy telling me, he goes, "Listen, I don't know what you're doing tonight, but if you want to come hang around, we're gonna be here." I'm like, "Here, what's going on at the shop at night?" He goes, "Big Al's coming down." I'm like, "Oh, what are you guys gonna do? Play cards or
Sure.
No." He goes, "No, he's coming down to build an engine." I'm like, "Build an engine?" He says, "Yeah, he wants to build it here," because he was so paranoid that somebody would look in the window and see what he was doing. There was that he had to come out to Long Island from Queens to
Right.
build this engine in cover of night. So I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to meet Big Al." Well, it ends up I did meet Big Al. Man, he was as big. I'd be like 300 pounds,
Sure.
just like Jabba the Hutt. Just
Right,
like
right.
a big blob with the biggest flannel shirt I ever saw. The biggest red and black flannel shirt, greasy hair hanging down over his face, scruggly mustache, Budweiser in one hand. He was smoking. Now, there's this block, and it was I don't know how big it was. He wasn't giving me any secrets, but he's sitting there, he's fitting the rings and the pistons in this block, and as he's the ash is just falling off a cigarette in the engine. I'm like, "Hey Al, isn't it like what are you doing?" "What do you mean? What am I doing? What the fuck? Who the fuck are you to ask me what I'm doing?" I was like, "Well, you're dropping your ashes. It'll help lap the rings. It's good for him." Pour some beer in there too. He was like a biker from the era. It was like just down and dirty.
Yeah.
But this guy was the fastest guy on the street. So I had to believe that he knew what he was doing, because he had that street cred. And I was like, man, it kind of like gave me a lesson in don't get your hopes set too high
Sure.
when you hear that somebody is like the man, because I mean I didn't, not that he wasn't, but he sure didn't portray it. It was funny. Just funny.
That story sounds like something that you'd have read in one of Martin Shore's magazines.
Oh yeah.
That story would have been, who's this Big Al? Everybody's heard of him. Nobody's seen him, and he comes through the door, and then he's spilling beer on all the tools and the engine and stuff. But you're like, yeah, but it's Big Al, So
it's funny you say that, because I'm still reading. I have a cache of Cars magazines from the 60s and 70s that Marty mastheaded, and I read them regularly. And about a month or so ago, I found an article about a guy out of Queens, and he was like a hot shoe. So he was kind of like the driver. Somebody built the car, and he was the driver. And I think they put his name, or like a pseudonym for his name. So I wrote to Marty. I said, "Hey, Marty, listen, man, in Cars, issue this, versions." I gave him all the numbers, July from whatever is it, 70. I said, and I scanned the article, and I said, it's articles attached. I said, who was that guy? And is he still around? And what was the story? And he got back to me. I tell you, Marty remembers everything. He says, yeah. He goes, yeah, he was a guy out of Long Island. He was like, kind of like he was like a hidden property. Nobody in Queens knew him because he was out on Long Island, and he was a hot shoe, and they brought him in, because nobody would know who he was. Right. And he said, yeah, I think, he ended up, he had a couple shops. He, I haven't had contact with that guy in many years, but Marty remembered the facts. And he says to me, Ray, he goes, thanks for doing that. He goes, keep that up, because you're really keeping me sharp, remembering this stuff from 50 and 60 years ago. I said, Marty, I can only hope I can remember an eighth of that when I'm at that point in my life.
When I had interviewed him, and this has been a while ago, because Ray, I met Marty Shore through you. That's how I got the introduction. Mm-hmm. And when his book Day One came out, which was published by Motor Books, I did an interview with him, and I wrote an article about him. I want to say that was 2016, 2017 timeframe. So anyway, at the time, I'm on, this is before Stellantis acquired everything, so it was still FCA. So I was on the auto show circuit for FCA, and which means that I was going around the country, and we were setting up at auto shows, and we were doing drives outside. A lot of automakers will do ride and drives, especially like at the smaller shows. Like, it's hard to do that like in Detroit just because of where like Huntington Place is located. But if you go to a show like in a smaller market, they usually have more space around the venue. So my team was on the drive team, and then we had another team like inside at the auto show. So say if you went to like the Orlando Auto Show or the Portland Auto Show or Sacramento Auto Show or San Francisco Auto Show, right? Like my team was there. We'd have a display inside that you could walk through, and then a display outside where you could drive the cars. Anyway, so at the time, everything was quote unquote new. We had 2017 models, so Chargers, Challengers, the Jeep, like I believe it's the Trackhawk version, so we had all the souped up stuff, right? And so I was telling Marty about that, and so I said, Marty, I said, I go, give me your honest opinion. I said, because I appreciate your world of muscle cars, and I said I see it all the time here in Detroit. I said it's everywhere. I said, but I didn't live in that world. I said, at the time you lived in that world. I said, the cars that you're writing about are different than the cars that I'm writing about, and they're different than the cars that I'm presenting to consumers on the auto show, which mainly I was with FCA, but I was mainly on the Dodge team, and then I was mainly Charger Challenger were my two cars. And I said, so here I'm around the new 2017 models. I'm around the new Chargers and Challengers. And I said, and maybe by extension, then we could say, if those cars, maybe like the new Camaro and the new Mustang. I said, so I'm around this new generation of muscle, sports, and performance cars. I was like, but how does this compare to what you saw and what you lived? And his response to me was, he's like, listen, Carl, he goes, here's something you got to understand. He goes, what you have today, he's like, they're good cars. He's like, they're technologically advanced cars. He said, so he goes, it doesn't do us any good. He goes to get into a battle over horsepower and torque. He's like, our power to weight ratio. He's like, because he goes, the cars that you're around, he said, there's no contest. He's like, they're faster, they're lighter. You know, he goes, it's the benefit of new technology, right? He said, but he said, my view is this. He said, you have good cars. He said, my generation had great cars. He said, and I loved it. And then he goes, your cars, he goes, can, like my generation, he goes, they can be driven on the road. And then he said this, he goes, the cars of my generation, he goes, were meant to be driven into the asphalt. He goes, they were meant to be driven. He goes, and the implication was basically like they were meant to take abuse, was kind of what he was saying. Like they were meant to go through the paces. And what he was saying is basically like, look, he's like, the cars you're around, Carl, he goes, they go through plenty of engineering and validation testing. He goes, they get the tar beat out of them as far as the testing goes. He's like, but the average owner, he's like, doesn't do that. He said, so he goes, your generation of performance cars, he's like, the Chargers, the Challengers, the Camaros, the Mustangs, he said, it's very similar, he said, to crew cab trucks that became minivans. He said, he goes, the difference is, he said, he goes, in my generation, he goes, we knew how to work on them. He goes, we knew how to drive them. And he said, he goes, and we did both of those things. He said, we worked on them hard and we drove them hard. And he said, he goes, I'm not saying you don't have great cars. He goes, you have great cars. He goes, look at the horsepower and the torque numbers. He said on like, he goes on like the 6.2 supercharged Hemi. He's like, those horsepower and torque numbers are insane. He's like, from the factory, he's like, that's crazy. He said, but he said, you're not working on that car. Right. He goes, you're taking that car to a dealership. He goes, because you have 2 years of complimentary maintenance or whatever. So interesting perspective from Marty Shore. So, that stuck out to me. Yeah, there's the book.
This is his book.
That's his book.
And I want to show you. So look at the picture he put on the back.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to show you something. I'm going to share a picture with you. Okay. This is Marty Shore driving that car. Mm-hmm. And when I saw this picture, I zoomed in on two things. This restaurant sign back here, and this sign over here says, welcome. It says Village of East Rockaway. That's where I grew up.
I see it.
That's where I grew up.
Okay.
And when I saw that, I got in touch with Marty and says, what the hell is going on here? You're driving a Daytona down Main Street in East Rockaway. He's like, yeah. I was like, you know, what's the I just made it bigger. I don't want to move myself. I said, what was the better? I said, explain that to me, because that's like, you know, I lived there. He goes, yeah, I lived there too. I lived in East Rockaway. I was like, what? Yeah. You got to be kidding me. We lived in the same town. So I noticed through some of the pictures that he had in the books, probably in this one, you know, he also, this was just a Joe Oldham book, yeah, but this was also Marty's other claim to fame. He did
right
the motion car, which was in Baldwin. So I saw the pictures, and there was a picture of a GTO. I can find it. It's probably in the book here. 67 GTO, I believe, white, and it was all lettered up for the track, and it was sitting in front of a house. And I see it was just a nondescript suburban house. And he told me what street he'd lived on. So I drove over there and I found the house. It still looked like it did back in the day. And I sent him a picture, you know, from the current day. I said, you used to drive these things, like just leave them on the street? He's like, yeah, nobody was stealing anything or bothering anybody. He goes, they didn't know what it was. So, yeah, what a down-to-earth guy. It was just so, that blew me away when I realized I grew up. I mean, the town I lived in was about a mile square. Mm-hmm. So we didn't live more than like a half mile from each other.
Right.
You know? And I had no idea, you know. And then again, I was a kid, so Marty Shore wouldn't have known who he was anyway. But
so there, he told me, Marty Shore, he told me another story that, so, and this was, so Marty Shore, he was the editor. He was like the managing editor, the editor in chief. He was like the guy.
Let me show you this.
Oh,
this
yeah.
is the GTO, fully lettered, in front of his suburban house. You know, the
Mhm.
car's got slicks on it. It's
Yep.
got the Cars magazine
Yep.
right on the door. Probably has motion performance on it.
Yep.
So, yeah, and he would lettered on the window from the track. You know, BSH. Yeah. So I'm sorry.
No. You're good. So he was this was back when I interviewed him. So Marty, and I don't remember the guy who was writing. Marty had a writer who was doing a review on the AMC Pacer. So
Oh
they
wait,
had
hold on.
yeah.
It was Joe Oldham.
Was it Joe Oldham doing it?
Confessions of a Muscle Car Test Driver. That story is in this book.
Is it? Is this the AMC Pacer story? Yeah.
Joe also did this one, the American Muscle Car. No, it wasn't a Pacer. It was a Javelin.
Javelin. That's okay.
And go on, finish the story, because I'll tell you if
So-
it's
And
different. I'll tell you.
I think Joe Oldham passed away. Like
He did.
Okay.
He did.
So-
And now his son Scott is an auto journalist.
Okay.
He was working for Jaguar for a while, but now Scott is also an auto journalist. And one of Joe's claims to fame was he bought a Motion Camaro in '69
Right.
and had it hot, you know, with a 427,
Yes.
had it all done up. And it was, he caught guys trying to steal it out of his parking garage in Queens a couple of times. But the third time, they got it. And the car never resurfaced. So later on in years, Scott, his son Scott, and I don't know if it was somebody else involved, they found the car and built a recreation of it for him.
Nice.
And he actually had it at the muscle car, you know, the McCacken show back probably in like 2014 or 15.
Sure. Well, it might have been a Javelin. I don't know why I'm thinking Pacer, but anyway, whatever car they were reviewing, I want to say like a tire fell off or something.
Pieces were falling off the car as Joe drove it.
Yeah, and so it's a press vehicle. It's a
Here it is.
loaner, and
It's called the day I got banned for life.
yes,
It was that Javelin right there.
that's it. And
And-
wasn't there something that it ended up getting back, and the PR rep, yeah, there we go, yeah, the tire flew, yeah. And so the PR rep, I don't know how the PR rep found out, or I don't know if Marty contacted them and was like, hey, this thing's a lemon, and you know, we're gonna run this story. There was a clash with the PR rep or with the manufacturer, and so they basically were like, you know, don't print those photos and don't print that article, which I mean, it's like, you gave us the car. I mean, now like we can, you know, so I agree with Marty as an editor, like, no, we're going to run this. You gave us the car. And I think somehow, I don't know if this is in there. It might be in the story, you know, and Marty Shore told me that he heard him out. He heard the PR rep out. Like, he's like, I heard him out on the phone. He's like, he made his case. And I just respectfully kept telling him, no, like, I'm sorry, you gave us the press vehicle, like you gave us, like, we are going to run this story, and our readers would have a right to know this stuff. And Marty was like, the PR person or whoever was at the manufacturer kept getting more and more heated. And finally, Marty Short was like, look, here's the answer. The answer is not us pulling the story. The answer is you building a better car.
Thanks, Jim. I got a cricket in my basement now.
Yeah, they do that.
I can hear him.
So, Carl, to that point, I remember Joe. Now, that story was told to us live on the radio by Joe Oldham himself.
Okay. Am I remembering that right?
Yes, very correct. And I have it. I may have it on a cassette, but I know I have a copy of it because I have all the shows. And I would love to dig that out and replay that, because Joe's interviews were just phenomenal.
Right.
And Joe had said he was getting called from this guy, and not that he wasn't going to take the call, it just wasn't the right time, or he didn't have the time. So he put the guy off for a couple of phone calls, and when the guy finally got Joe on the phone, he lit into him.
Right.
And Joe, you know, being a New Yorker and you know, a journalist under Marty, with the carte blanche of, Joe told me, he said he used to bring articles into Marty and say, here's a review on because we had Englishtown Raceway right in New Jersey. You always go there to drag strip or National Speedway. Everything got drag strip tested and all sorts of stuff. So he said, yeah, this one isn't, they're not going to like this one, just a generic article. And Marty would say to him, Joe, he says, is this, to the best of your ability and knowledge, is this the truth? Is everything in here backed up? Can you substantiate it? Is it exactly what happened? And Joe would say, absolutely, Marty, it's exactly how it is. He goes, well, then we're running it. He goes, I don't care what it says. He goes, they're going to have to live with it. He says, because you're doing the right thing. And that was the way Marty was. It was like, if you're doing good, we're going to say you do good. If you're putting out crap, we're calling it crap.
Right.
And when the guy from AMC got a hold of Joe, he dressed him up and down, and Joe just listened to him. Yep. And then he came back with his defense and went down the laundry list of all the things, pieces that fell off, things that rattled, the wheel fell off on him. He's like, listen, we tried every which way to make this car right. He goes, but we're taking other cars out of the pool, and they're not doing this. He goes, so he said, you got to build a better car. He goes, and he goes, my editor gave me the go-to. He goes, we're running an article. I think the guy finally had to acquiesce. I don't know if he ever apologized. I don't remember.
Right.
But yeah, that's the way they did business. It was like, no bullshit.
And then Marty, I can remember Marty was saying, he goes, it was advantageous for us to run the story because high performance cars was not advertiser supported. Yes, there were some ads in there, but it wasn't primarily advertiser supported. It was newsstand and subscription reported. So they were not under the same pressures as like the California automotive publications would have been, where it's like, okay, like we're going to write a review of a car, but then you flip over 4 or 5 pages and then that manufacturer has a full page ad, right? So Marty was like, we were not bound. He said we were not bound by advertising constraints because the majority of our revenue didn't come from that.
There's another one that he was famous for, and it was Hemi Cuda.
Right.
And Joe recounted the story and said, man, I ruffled a lot of fins over that article, because he came out early saying, even in the 60s, is saying the Hemi cars are hellions on the track, but they suck on the street. They're not good street engines. You really can't tune them right, or you can't keep them in tune. He said a good running 383 or 440 will whip a Hemi on the street.
Right.
Because it just stays in tune better, and he, guys didn't want to hear that back then. They don't want to hear it today, Right. So, very, very good. In fact, now what I've been doing is going through these magazines, and I started doing this with all my magazines. Where I've just been cutting out the articles I want to save, and I put them in file folders in a file cabinet. It's a lot.
Sure.
It's condensed. But I've been sending Brian all of the stuff I find on the Mustangs and because there's a ton of Mustang stuff. I'm building another pile for Brian over here somewhere. But so he's reading it like third hand now, 50 years later. So, and the stuff still stands up. It's, the writing is great. I mean, very period piece. When Marty would write an article, he'd talk about the Boss new accessory, or the real, what was some of the other words he would use. Very, very, period correct language, which today is just kind of laughable. But
right.
Marty always had the big long sideburns, and
some of that's rehashed, because one of those articles you sent me, Ray sent it was from the 60s, and I found it in one of my magazines from the 80s.
They reran it, yeah.
They just reran it, and it's almost the same pictures. They changed a few words in it.
Okay, yeah.
So
it stands up.
That was back on these things, the Thunderbird lights.
Oh, yeah, right. I remember that one. Yeah, sure. So it was funny, when we first, I think what happened is it was the motion book. I think I saw it advertised it had to be in a car magazine. It might have been Muscle Car Review, or did they stop by then? I don't know. They did like a little book review, and this is going back to like, I don't know, 2005 or 6. And I reached out to Marty, and I didn't know him yet. I had never spoken to the man. me see if they have a date in here when this book was published. I don't remember. And I think I went through the book company. Yeah, I think I had to go through the book company, and they put me in touch with Marty. And I said, listen, I'd like to have you on my show. Oh man, this is small print. That's a 2009. Okay, so I said, yeah, I'd like to have you on my show. I said, just so you know, we're in Long Island. I said, I didn't realize how deep his ties were. And I said, I grew up here and I went to Motion and bought parts as a teen. I was never a heavy hitter with that stuff. I was too young, didn't have that kind of money. I said, but I know, I know where you're coming from, and I want to have you on the show to talk about that book. And he says, okay, listen. He goes, I'll tell you what. He says, I'll do your show. He says, but my book isn't out yet. It's going to be out in a couple months. He goes, I want you to talk to Joe Oldham. He says, my good friend, he was one of my writers, Joe Oldham. He goes, I'll put you in touch with him. He's got a book coming out, and I want you to interview him first. He goes, give Joe the stage first.
Right.
Probably what Marty was thinking. Let's see what these yahoos can do. If they know how to do an interview, or if they're gonna, if they're gonna muck it all up.
Yeah.
Because he is Sly's boss. So do Joe first. He goes, and then when my book comes out, I'll come on. Okay. We had Joe Oldham on and killed it. Joe was just such a great interview. It was, you thought an hour went fast on Sunday. You should have been there for that day, man. It was like, I said, Joe, we didn't even, I got an advanced copy of the book and I read it. And I said, it was like any novel that you read that you don't want to end, or a series on TV, it's coming to the end. You're like, you want to slow down because you want to delay it.
Yeah.
I said, Joe, I want part 2, man. I said, this book, every single story. And in that book, Joe's book is just stories of each car. They're all stories of individual cars he test drove and wrote about. And it's the good and the bad, so
Right.
it's just the way it's from the Chronicles of Joe Oldham. And he's like, yeah, thanks. He goes, I said, I don't think you realize how important that is to guys like us.
Yep.
I mean, I couldn't buy those cars when they were new. I was a little too young.
Sure.
I said, but now certainly, I work with them and have them. And then I guess it worked. He reported back to Marty, and he told Marty, we were good. I guess we were respectful. We didn't sandbag him. We weren't idiots. We know cars. We weren't, we weren't like doing needlecraft yesterday and cars today.
Right.
And Marty strung me along for a while, but then he finally came on, and now he, like I said, he's become such a good friend, and and I want to keep him. I love keeping him in the loop, but he's hard to land. He tends to want to come on when he's got a project going, or it's like I said, Marty, just come on and talk casually one day. Let's just talk about anything. We'll just reminisce. We don't have to have a subject, but I think he's a little more structured.
Right.
So yeah.
All right, guys, I got to take off.
Hey,
All right, Jim. Take the
Good to
cricket
see you,
with
buddy.
me, please.
Yeah.
Good to see you, friend.
I'm going to get this guy.
Go see Buddy Holly. Go on.
Take care.
All right. So long.
Good night,
Hey,
Jim.
friend.
So
Yeah.
Carl, you never know what paths you're going to go through. For a long time, I got involved with motor books, and then with what's the other one? The other big player.
Peterson.
No, not Peter. Well, a lot of them were under Peterson, but motor books. There was another independent that I got involved with. So I still get. Well, I just got one yesterday. I just got one the other day. And for a long time we had author after author after author, and I started getting a little put off by it because guys were doing restoration books. I said, good, we'll talk restoration. We're going to talk about the nuts and bolts and the stuff that we do in the garage. And I had a guy out who did how to restore your GTO. And when I talked to him, I like to talk to the guys beforehand. And I said, yes. So how long did it take you to go through the project? And ended up that he told me, he goes, listen, he goes, oh, I think you have a misconception. He says, I don't do any of the work. I don't restore anything. He says, I go to shops and I just photograph them, and then I write, the words after they tell me what they did. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
so you're just a writer.
Yeah.
I'm like, I was hoping to get like the guy in the shop doing the work. So he goes, no, those guys. He says, truthfully, those guys aren't really good interviews. I'm like, yeah, I know. I said, but we have a way of kind of bringing that out of people sometimes. So
Yeah.
so we kind of backed off on the authors a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then sometimes there's a PR slant to where it's like they only want to talk about the book or the project or the launch date, and so then you're like, well, let's talk about some of the content of the book, but then they don't want to give it away because they want people to buy it, or they so you're like you said, well, let's talk about the nuts and bolts of whatever the topic is, and they're like, well, I can really only state at kind of these so many points on the script and whatnot, but and I get what they're saying, where they're like, those guys, aren't a good interview, but usually those are the guys that have the knowledge, and that's really what you're after. Maybe that versus a good interview, like you said. I think that you and Chris on the air could have pulled out all kinds of nuggets.
There isn't, I have to say, and I'm not blowing my own horn here, but there hasn't been a person we've had on yet that we didn't get something out of that was positive. And we've had some real boring, dull, drab people. But, Chris will just come up with one of his wacky questions out of the blue, and it's just like, sometimes it just blows the whole thing wide open. It changes direction. It's like, okay, good. Now at least we're moving,
And and I never did print publishing, so it's like every article I've ever written about a car is online, and that's just the time and space that we live in. But it's a lot harder to do what Joe Oldham does, where he's archived every car into a book. That's a lot more difficult today. Like, I don't know that I could go back and do, every single car I've written about, but I also wasn't writing in the same style that Joe Oldham was, because I was writing, primarily for consumers, and then primarily to hit the search engine optimization metrics, right? So it's like, if I'm writing an article on, whatever, a Subaru whatever that's being released, or a Honda whatever that's being released, it's like I have to think, okay, who would be the intended demographic, that would be wanting to find information on that car. So I've got to have, so many things in this paragraph that if somebody types it into Google, that my article is going to show up, and, because that's part of your revenue when you're when you're a website, number of eyeballs on your site, and things like that. And so it's different in the era of those guys. I like the previous era better. I think that there's something to be said about what Oldham was doing.
This was Joe Oldham's SEO right here. A tagline like that.
Yep.
Baldwin Motion Mayhem. Like, okay, what, I want to read that. I want to see what that's got to say. And Marty, with Motion, Joe Rosen ran the place. He was the mechanic. He did the dyno work. He was the brains behind the mechanical stuff. And they said somewhere along the line, someone coined the term, which is very apt. Joel made the steak, Marty made it sizzle. Because Marty was the ad guy. All those motion posters, with the cars chained down and all the crazy graphics, that was all Marty Shore. He did all that advertising and that print stuff, and that's what got people, a lot of people into motion. The magazine ads, I got 100 of them in my stash here. It was just that eye candy of like, yeah, wow. And you're putting pictures of Holly carburetors, MT valve covers, hooker headers, all the stuff, the velocity stacks, all the stuff, Sun Tax, all the stuff that people want to buy. Come down and shop. Racers discount 10%. 10% on like a 60% markup. Yeah, we'll take care of you. Don't worry.
Right.
But Marty was. It was Mad Men. It was Mad Men, but in real life. So.
Right. Yeah, I miss that. I miss that era. I mean, that was an era I think that would have been really would have been really cool to experience. And,
yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I'm going to follow Jim. I've been up over 24 hours right now, so I'm going to bed. Ray, Keith, Brian, Carl, you guys take care. We'll catch you later.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, Vince. Good seeing you.
Careful.
Good seeing you.
Be safe.
All right, you too. Bye.
All right. Yeah. So, boy, I didn't expect to talk that much tonight.
Yeah. Well,
I thought it was going to be old Carl.
Yeah, and then I did find some information on the, just as we've been talking, this Bearing Burners Auto Club in
Oh.
Mount Clemens.
I have a license plate, a car club plate out in my garage that I got from somewhere. I don't know where. I think I might have got it at a car show, but it's the Gear Grinders.
Okay.
And it's like a picture of two gears together. So, and it was apparently a real club back in some day, probably in the 50s.
Yeah, that's
cool names.
That's what this one says here. So this is on what website is this? This is Michigan Hot Rod Association. I just found it, and they said 1 year after forming the Bearing Burners Auto Club in 1950, the club joined forces with the Michigan Hot Rod Association. In 1959, the club joined the National Hot Rod Association, and then in 1961 was incorporated in Michigan as a nonprofit organization. In addition to Autorama support. So Autorama is a huge show that happens, I believe it's in January, happens every year here at the Huntington Place, or formerly Cobo Hall. So in addition to Autorama, the Bearing Burners have a long history of hosting and supporting Michigan auto events, from the annual ice runs of the 1960s to their Freedom Hill and downtown Mount Clemens car shows. The Bearing Burners have provided a wonderful forum for the Michigan automotive enthusiast. So it looks like they meet the first Wednesday of each month. So
actually, out here, there's a club called the Rod Snappers, and our friend Christian from the show, Christian's dad was in the club. I think he may have even been inducted at some point. So yeah, the Rod Snappers. And he gave me one of their cards. They had those. They used to do that back in the 50s and 60s, where if a car club member, that's when they were, trying to keep a good image. And
sure.
If they stop on the side of the road to help somebody, either maybe help a woman change a flat, or a guy put some water in his battery, or a fan belt or something, they'd give them a courtesy card, say you've been helped by a member of the Rod Snappers or whatever.
Sure.
And that was when things were done kind of classy. Really
that's a really good idea. Like that's a really that's a clever, it's a creative idea. Yeah, because you could see how some of those cars had a negative connotation associated with them, or some of those clubs. Yeah.
Yep.
So that was kind of cool. It was kind of neat. But things have changed. Now, it's kind of funny because I was talking to my buddy Bob today from the Olds Club. They just judged two of the big car shows down here on the island, two of them at the beaches, two town shows with 1,000 plus cars each. And Bob has a great judging sheet. In fact, I attended one of his shows as a participant back in the 80s, and then I've always been a car show judge since the late 70s.
Sure.
I liked his sheet so much. I thought it made so much sense. I adopted it in every club I was in. And it was funny because when I got to, now, just to give you background, Bob's brother and I, his younger brother and I, have been friends since we're like 13, 14 years old. So, 50 years plus. And Bob is the older brother. He's 71, so he's a couple of years older than us. But I'd always heard about my friend Ricky's brother Bob. Yeah, he's got all the 442s. He had like seven 442s. And this is going back to like the 80s. He always had 442s and Jetfires and F-85s and whatever. So they always said, yeah, you got to meet Bob. He's such a great, you get, with the car thing, you get along with him. I never had a chance to meet the guy. Probably about 8, 9 years ago, I did put it together, and I did meet him over this one car show. And lo and behold, we touched bases, who knows who. And I told him I've known his brother since, forever. And Bob and I now are great friends. And that's, like I said, that's who I may be going to the show with.
Right.
But he was telling me now at the Oldsmobile Club, he said today, he says, Ray, he says, it seems like every meeting now we've been picking up 1 or 2 new members. I said, you're defying the odds, man. Car clubs are losing people like crazy.
Right.
Members to attrition, age, they sold the car, they're dying.
Yep.
Whatever. Yep. And younger guys aren't coming in. He says, well, we just had a girl at our meeting, a 21-year-old girl comes down with a 66 F-85 4-door.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing special. It had some rust and patina on it, but she loves the car. And said she got up and spoke at the meeting, and said she's hosting a cruise night with some other people. It's in October. I said, well, you know what? I'll go. I said, if you want to go, I'll go to that cruise night. I'll support her.
Yeah,
So
right.
I may have her on the show. She's
Absolutely.
she can obviously talk in front of a group of guys, so she's not shy and she can handle herself. So,
there's in some of the car shows I've been to around here. So, and it varies. So you have these huge cars and coffee stuff at the M1 Concourse, which is up in Pontiac, all the way to downriver south of the city where you have, your annual summer car show that takes place on a weekend, and it happens every year on Main Street. Right. And then all the car shows, in between, like, for example, that one in Mount Clemens, or Royal Oak, Michigan. So up, Woodward Avenue, if you're going out of Detroit and you go up Woodward Avenue through like Ferndale and Royal Oak, Royal Oak's got a car show, and they take up the parking lot there, the fire department, and then there's a church. And so they kind of share that parking lot. And then there you go, right on the corner, there's a car show. So it's easy to find one when it's summertime. But one of sort of the prevailing schools of thought, I think, and keep in mind, this is just my experience. So this is anecdotal evidence, and it's not like hard evidence, but, one of the things is that I hear is that there is a strong desire for it to live on, no matter how modern cars get. And then usually when they say modern, they're talking about electric vehicles, so they're like, okay, well, whether we move towards electric vehicles or whatever modern technology is going to happen, or however car ownership is going to change, if you look around and you look at all these families out here, and, people taking pictures and people walking through and, grabbing some food, a burger, and walking through, like, this is going to live on, or it's got to live on, because it's such an important, it's not even just the cars. It's such an important component to the way of life here in the Detroit metro, that if you didn't have these shows in the summer, it just wouldn't feel right. Like the summer wouldn't be complete. So there's like this prevailing theory or prevailing sentiment rather, of whatever we've got to do to preserve this. And it is nice to see some young people. And then when you talk to some of the people who are enthusiasts, who are collectors, or who have the disposable income to have multiple cars, whether at these shows or other shows, a lot of them say, I'm not against electric vehicles. I like it. I like instantaneous torque, or maybe I even own one. I'm not against it. I'm all for it. I just want there to be room for both. I don't mind having an electric vehicle for a daily driver, but I want room for all this stuff that I do during the summer. On the weekends, I still want to drive my gasoline, insert whatever make and model.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, of course, in a community setting, you need backing, you need, merchant support, you need some town support.
Right.
You want to do it a little bigger. Even if it's just to close down a street and, give people access or whatever. So as long as that persists, that's definitely doable. Because I see a lot of people are into, I was over at my friend Pirate Paul's house over the weekend, because Paul, I bought that fitting to go into my radiator hose to put the temperature sensor in. I needed to drill and tap it for 3/8 pipe, and Paul had the tap. So
sure.
So we're over his house, and I'm looking. He's got his GTX there that he's restoring, and he's always got something going on. So in the driveways is 2-door Ram. What would you call it? It's like the Blazer style, like the 5 Blazer style, but the Ram.
Right. Yeah.
What was it called? The Ram Charge?
There's the Ram Charger. Wasn't there the Prospector?
There was there was a pickup truck. It had the big Ram badges on the fenders.
Yeah.
It's got something on the back. But it's a 2-door.
I can just picture it. Yeah.
Built-in roll bar. He said a lot of people ordered them without roofs. They were bought without roofs.
Yep.
And,
they had a removable top.
Right.
Yeah. So I said, well, what's with this? And he goes, his daughter, who's a car girl, she's down in Tennessee, but she has in fact, she had a new Charger that she hot rodded and wrapped, did a whole bunch of stuff with
Sure.
it. And now she bought a new, a hot rod Jeep that's like, a Cherokee she had it up here last, I saw it about a month ago. And he goes, yeah, she wants to go like, trail riding out in Tennessee. So we had to find one of these. He goes, I found one upstate, but I missed it by like a day. He goes, I found this one in Tennessee. She's in like Murfreesboro. He found it in Knoxville.
Okay.
Finds it in Tennessee, has it shipped back to New York. Now he's going to do all the work to it. He's got to do a bunch of seals that are leaking. He's going to do a lift kit, doing a bunch of other thing. And then it's going to go back down to Tennessee so she can go trail driving. I'm like, wow. I'm like, talk about it, a project. That's
yeah.
That's where my warehouse is.
Is it? Yeah.
That's where my stuff comes out of Tennessee.
Okay. Where in Tennessee?
Where she is, Murfreesboro. Yep.
That's where Uncle Tony is. Tony DeFeo's in Murfreesboro.
Yeah, that's where that's one of our distribution center for stuff. That's on the East Coast.
So Brian, why don't you catch Carl up on the Mustang project?
Yeah, please. Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
My Mustang?
Yeah.
Well,
he hasn't heard, so
Yeah, no. I mean, like I said, finally got more done. I mean, it's been sitting since I bought the house. So that was back in 90.
Well, you don't have to go back that far.
Yeah, well, no. But I'm just saying
Way
the car
back when.
sat.
Yeah,
I mean, no, the car just sat for all these years.
Typical project. Yeah, that's what happens.
And, like I said, Ray and a few other people just starting. And one day, like I said, I just started on it. And
well, if I could interject, what Brian's trying to say very politely is we busted his balls relentlessly.
Right.
Yeah.
And now.
And, and I will admit one of the hardest things that I had with the car was technically I'm the third owner of this car.
Okay.
And the girl the girl that had it before, she only had it for a couple of years, like in high school. And once she graduated high school, the car sat at her parents. She didn't want to get rid of the car. She just didn't have anywhere to put it.
Right.
And her dad finally said, look, you got to do something with the car. And I bought it. So, like I said, she never really had it long enough with the car. So, technically, I guess I can say I'm the second owner of the car.
Okay.
I've had sitting. And that was one of my problems as time went on. And as I looked at other Mustangs, especially my era, it's a 66. It's first generation Mustang fastback.
Right.
I mean, people cut them up. You can't find them, And I was afraid to do anything with the car because it's been sitting for the 30 years that I've had it.
Right.
So, but
drive it, though. You did drive it for a while.
Oh yeah, I drove it hard.
And you relentlessly beat the shit out of it. So that car wasn't sitting or babied. Only after you.
No, I beat the crap out of the car. Like I said. But I'm just saying, as a time, I only drove it in high school. And,
sure.
I drove, and then I had gotten my other cars, so I didn't drive it much. And then, I took it all apart. I had quarter panels and a floor put in because I knew right before I bought the house and got married, I knew how stories goes, and it literally did what it did. It just sat here. And after being kindly reminded to work on it.
Relentlessly balls busted.
Right.
And, I started and, I've had a few surprises as you're, stripping it down and you find a rust hole that you didn't really, I had to rebuild a whole shock tower.
Right.
And so forth. But again, it's just, I'm just hoping that here, I like to say maybe in another month or two, I have a rolling chassis.
Sure.
I just have to I'm trying to stay a little hot roddy, but basic. I just want to be able to get it to drive.
Right.
I want to be able to drive it. and
Brian,
still,
if he can fit in it again.
yeah, I can fit in it. I fit in it quite well sitting on that milk carton behind it.
That's all that counts.
And this
But,
is a 289 Mustang.
Yeah, it's 289.
Okay.
It's a factory A car, which was the 225 horsepower.
Okay.
They had A car. They had the C, which was a 2-barrel. They had the A, which was premium fuel, 225 horsepower, and then you had the K car.
Okay.
So this was actually a very rare. I mean, very unique car because you figure if they would have spent the $65 for the 4-speed transmission and I don't know, $45 for disc brakes, it would have been a GT.
Sure.
You know,
Right.
it had the deluxe interior or the pony interior. It has the seats with the horsies running on it and the wood grain.
Yeah.
And it had a 3-speed originally, but it had the quick ratio steering box, and it had the premium fuel or the 225 horsepower, which, you know, like I said, and it had the quick ratio box. And what was the other one? It had the
suspension, maybe.
Well, they didn't really have suspension, but it had the it was the V8 suspension because back then they had 4 lugs or 5 lugs.
Right.
Were the big difference. But again, I was dumbfounded. It was like you had some salesman order this car, and he just went for the big motor and, you know, don't worry about brakes or the 4-speed. I guess, you know,
a lot of people
why they put a 3-speed in it.
You know, and I remember reading articles that were talking about when in the mid 60s, when disc brakes were starting to be introduced, like with Pontiac, it was 67. They had I think it was Delco Moraine. It was like a 4-piston caliper, and they people wouldn't buy them. They were like, no, we don't trust those damn European brakes. We want our damn drum brakes.
New technology.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, wow, that's you got to say that's pretty crazy. So, yeah, you know, something that was available they could have had for pennies, that nobody wanted.
Yeah, and like I said, with the deluxe interior or the pony interior, deluxe was 67, 68, 65, 66 was a pony interior. There was something only like 5,200 of my model made.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a lot. Now, granted, there was over 100,000 fastbacks made, you know, but just that setup. So, you know, like I said, but hopefully, like I said, I've got the front almost done. I'm starting on the rear section of the car, and I was on. Like I said, there was just a couple of things. Like I have a 9-inch Lincoln. What was that baby Lincoln? The Versailles.
Versailles,
yeah. I've got that. That was the same width as the 65, 66. 9-inch. So there was no modification or cutting. So it would bolt right in. And so if you had a Versailles, a 4-wheel disc Versailles or Granada 4-wheel disc, that was the easy mod. You didn't have to do any kind of modification, or unless you could find like I think it was a 1956 Ford station wagon 9-inch was the same width that you didn't have. So there wasn't. So that I want to put that in the rear or in the back of it. And, you know, like I said, the only thing I just wish that I had a little bit more daylight or time.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
by
the time I get home, sometimes getting home, it's kind of hard to come down and get started. And of course, I have a curfew.
Yeah.
Too much noise being in the house, you know. Not,
when I was at Paul's, he was doing another side project on his son's. They have another Jeep, like an SJ, and they use it as a knockaround. But the roof had all the paint had kind of peeled off the roof and the hood. And he says, "Yeah, I got to treat that." He bought some black epoxy primer, and he showed me sitting there on the floor. I saw it. He bought that big drum cutting tool. He bought it from Harbor Freight. I said, yeah, Brian bought one of those, but he bought it from
Eastwood.
Eastwood. I said, Paul, you're gonna love that thing. It's gonna eat like crazy.
Yeah, it's that thing.
I said, wear eye and ear protection now.
Man, that thing is awesome. And that's was one of the surprises, because when I was doing the front and I was coming along in the lower part of the frame, I'm coming along, and all of a sudden it was this like big poof of rust, brown dust.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit. I'm just like tearing shit up going along. And then I pull back and go in and I look, and I got this hole about yay big.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, that wasn't supposed to be there. And so I got I just measured the thickness and got some sheet steel and cut it out and welded that in and grinded it down. And like I said, I got to finish welding in the torque boxes. The car never had torque boxes. They didn't do that until 67. They did one side, and then 68 they put them on both. Putting torque boxes in, and I got to finish welding on the inside. So where I put them in, but I got them up in, and other than luckily, like I said, I'm heated and air conditioning in the garage. But I need to do something, and I've talked to Ray about this, going back and forth about what paint I want to do.
Right.
I want to do a bed liner or stuff. So I like what's that stuff?
Rhino liner or
not Rhino. It starts with an R. Raised no.
Yeah, no, we were talking about this last week. We couldn't. There's a bunch of them out there. There's 100 out there.
I just don't. I don't want
lizard
bed
skin.
liner.
Lizard skin, right?
Well, the lizard skin and not rhino. What is that shit called? Yeah. I like it because the texture. I don't want to really.
Well, you can make it what you want, because when they did my car, Mike had asked me. He says, "Listen, how do you want the bottom of the car done?" I said, "Well, I want it with that bed liner, but I want it very fine. I don't want it to look like undercoat. It doesn't have to look like gloss paint, but it should be somewhere in between." I just
it's something to do with pressure, what they run the pressure at, I think, or how much.
It's how they exactly.
It's how it's mixed. What part? 3-to-1, 4-to-1, or whatever it is.
Right.
I think they make it.
Yeah. So, but like I said, I've been dumbfounded. When I was scraping the bottom of the car, I couldn't believe how much, because the bottom of the car was, originally red oxide.
Okay.
And I was really I never paid attention to it all the times I was underneath of it, putting a transmission or a rear end in it. I didn't have a girlfriend during high school because I smelled like 90 weight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Between putting rocker arms on it and smelling like 90 weight, I wasn't, number one on the list of dating, so, but I couldn't get over when I scraped it, how it still had the red oxide. I'm just kind of surprised on how clean the car was. Of course, I will admit it sat the last 30 years in a garage. It wasn't being driven, but
right.
I
didn't have some of the stuff, like you said, guys, a couple people buying cars, or some that I went to look at. I'm like, holy crap! Mine could have been a real nightmare.
Yeah.
Open them up.
For the liners, you said it begins with an R. Is there a Raptor linos? Raptor linings?
Yes.
Yeah. Raptor linings.
Yeah, that's because they got some that the Raptor you can tint it. So
yeah.
I was thinking that I could go ahead and tint it the red oxide and put that on the bottom, and then go from there.
You know, I was just watching an episode of Graveyard Cars. It was an older one, and a customer had a Cuda. It was an e-body, and it was a orange or a red car, and he requested. Now, you know, Mopars are always done where the inside of the engine bay and the trunk were all body color. And this guy requested that the whole bottom of the car be painted body color.
Okay.
And Will, the painter, was going off and saying, you know, I hate when people want to do this. He says, because I have to prep the whole bottom of the car. He says, you don't realize. He showed it. They had it on a jig. He said there are so many hills, rises, valleys, cutbacks, curves. He goes, you got to get in and sand every one and then prep every one. He says, he goes, I'll have a week of labor on just prepping the bottom of this body. He goes, and the guy's never going to see it. He says, but that's what he wants. So, you know, it's good. He's pay for it. So that's what we got to give him. So I was like, wow, yeah, you don't realize that. I'm so glad I'm not a body guy.
Yeah, no, so like I said, that wrap, and I think you can do it with others, but I like that.
Yeah.
So far, everything I've watched and looked at, I like that texture. It's not very aggressive or whatever. It's just a subtle, the texture. And I know that that's controllable by how it's mixed and what pressure. I've heard that's, you know, like I said, again, like everything else, you know, until you try it yourself, you're really not going to know, because you know, you can listen to 3 different people and watch 5 different stories, and you still don't know, you still don't get a definite answer. And sometimes that gets me kind of leery, because I hate spending I don't mind spending the time,
sure,
but spending the money. And if you don't have what you want, and especially if you got to tear it back apart or, you know, re-prep everything, I don't know. Like I said, that's the only thing. When I was up at Carlisle, when I found my fenders, that's the next thing I need to I want to really get started. I really want to do it before it got cold, because I can work outside, because I just have more room. But I need... Actually, I need it to figure out, because the patch panels are, I guess the way they were pressed, the inside, the lip for the fender on the thing is rough. And of course, people say take a hammer and dolly them out. But I know if you do that, you're moving the metal so it stretches. You're losing your shape. And then there's a guy saying you got to cut them and re-weld them so that it doesn't have that ripple effect by the wheel. And again, I need to really talk to, I guess, to Arco or somebody that does it that I could trust to tell me what to do, because I don't want to pound them out and then have it misshaped, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's you know, that type of stuff. I know enough to get me in trouble, but not enough to get me out of it.
yeah, not enough to get me out of it.
I know enough to step in it. I just don't know, you know, when I should wipe it out between my toes before I get any further. You know, that's my problem with a lot. I have no problem trying it.
Yeah. I was looking at this Raptor coatings, Raptor linings. It looks like a lot of people use it as a bed liner for a truck. Like that's what it primarily comes back as.
Yeah.
So you know what? I will show you this. How do there we go.
Fun.
I will show you share screen window. Okay. So this is the bottom of the back of my car. So that's, I mean, the gas tank was painted with spray, but from what you can see under here, this is all that very fine liner.
Yeah, it just looks like paint.
Yeah,
right.
So it does. It just looks like paint.
Yeah.
So it's just not, you know, I mean, it's not smooth and continuous. It looks, it's got texture in it, but that's
Right.
kind of what I wanted. It's just, it's a very, very fine pattern. So, if I don't think you'd be upset with that, Brian. I think it would be.
Yeah.
I don't think it would really.
Yeah.
I don't think
And
it would.
like I said, and I know it's with mixture, but I'm not a gloss guy. I hate shiny.
This is kind of like a semi-gloss.
And I'm like you said, semi or
I mean, here
matte
we go.
black. I don't like.
It seems like the front of the car is more of a semi-gloss than the back of the car.
Yeah. Right.
But then again, I mean, these control arms, they're powder coated. The front end components from Global West were powder coated, but the engine cradle, this is painted. I use this semi-gloss epoxy spray.
Uh-huh.
And, the oil pan is even painted with that stuff. The sway bar is painted with it.
Right.
That's all just semi-gloss paint. And then you go back to you see like it's rougher on the frame rail. But, again, it's the underside of the car, so who the hell cares? I just want to stop any kind of rust or any kind of, any kind of other issues. So
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
I don't think you'll go wrong with it.
No, it's just like I said. I hopefully I got the front half, a little more than the front half cleaned up. I just got to finish all the way to the back, and I found I think I knew, I just had forgotten, but the guy never when he put the trunk floors in, he never spot welded them to the frame.
Oh,
So
okay.
it was I had a very interesting moment when when a couple weeks ago when Chris was talking about the shady jack stand, jacking the car up.
Yes.
Well, because there's no rear end, no wheels, no nothing, and the car's sitting on jack stands, I wanted to go 2 more clicks higher.
Uh-huh.
So I had the floor jack, and I had 3, not 2, but 3 4x4s laying together. And then I had one going, a 2x4 that went across the frame.
Right.
And I'm jacking the car up, and I get the one jack stand clicked. And I'm getting the other one, and I kind of noticed the wood moving kind of funny. And I was like, why is this moving? And then I realized it wasn't the wood moving. It was the rear frame rails that weren't welded to the floor.
Oh,
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, click, it's on, bring it back down. And I said, okay. And then I realized I grabbed a hold, and I was like, holy crap, this whole time, this thing's, I guess he thought, I probably told him, because I had this stuff. Remember, I was on back half the car. I was going to put, I had the
mini tubs.
and coilovers and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I guess he just realized I was going to cut it all back out or take it all back out. So
Yeah.
when he put the floors in, he never did the back half. So that would have been an interesting surprise, getting the car all painted and done, and realize none of it was connected back there.
Right.
I mean, good example of how a thought process is in place at one point in time, and then when the reality of when the actual job is being done,
Yeah.
That is out the window. That's so far forgotten about.
Right. And like you said, it's just like you said about when you get another project car or a car from somebody else, you have no idea what they did, where they stopped, or
Right.
Well,
what was done or what wasn't.
That's the problem I have. I complain about working on guys' cars, and it hasn't happened to me too much. It's been the cars that came in that guys bought off of eBay or online, and case in point, you can see the car needs brakes. Okay, it's got brake calipers on it, but they're just smooth calipers. no marking, no manufacturer's mark. Whose are they? You know, what brakes do they take? Are they proprietary to the manufacturer, or is it an off-the-shelf pad? You know, now you got to be a forensic expert and backwards engineer everything. So you need, you know, brake hoses maybe. And I've had this happen where you order hoses and then they come in, but the fitting is wrong for that caliper because it's an aftermarket caliper, or a guy went from an American to a metric caliper. You know, I mean, there's so many things that could happen that can screw up the next guy.
Yeah. Well, that's like I said, you know, a lot of people don't, or they try to rely on your memory. They will try to rely, and you know, that's not going to hold up. And, you know, like I said, writing it all down or documenting it. That's what I did through here recently with all the parts I had, you know, because when I had all the parts in the car,
Right.
When I pulled all that out, I went and got the bends and I just put, you know, here's all the wiring harness stuff. Here's all that. Here's the ignition stuff that I had and get all that stuff together and see what you had and at least try to figure out what it was and where it came from. That
Right.
was, you know.
And sometimes you end up buying it again. You buy it new so you know what you have.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, there's a few things that I guess I was stuck on or made sure that I had. And some of it, I'm glad I did at that time because, you know, like the rear louvers on the car is that pot metal stuff. Nobody really makes that stuff. And you can't, I mean, that stuff just deteriorates after time.
Okay.
I mean, I have a pair that I have 2 sets of them complete that I had wrapped and put in a plastic tub, so they weren't and they were sealed and put in there. They still look great. The set that I had sitting out on the bench on my whatchamacallit, shelves in the garage, they're just kind of set out. I mean, they cracked. Now I don't know about what because of the environment, the temperature or whatever.
I think I sent you a couple of pictures yesterday. There's a shop right by my house here, right outside the block that I live on. I pass by the back of their shop, and they do a lot of hot rod stuff. And I'm driving with my wife. We went food shopping, and we came home, and I turn around. She goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I got to get a picture." And what I saw was a second-gen Camaro, but it was just the body, no subframe in the front and no rear end in the back. But the body was a really nice silver with black stripes and it had the black louvers on the back window.
Yeah.
It looked like a nice center section of a car. And sitting next to it was a roller, a full-bodied car on a chassis, on a subframe. And I said, this guy's going to make 2 cars out of one. I know it. This is going to be, I said, he's probably using this red one as a donor for parts to build this silver car. And I'm curious how the silver car got to be just a center section. It was like just seeing a torso laying in the street, But I sent the picture to one of my friends, and he said, of course, he keys in and comments on the louvers. Like, oh, wow, man, those are got to be hard to find now. I said, you know what? That's one of my least favorite options ever on cars. I don't know, because it makes them look like an armadillo, but they look better on some cars than others. But
right.
I said, yeah, funny you would key in on that, But
gentlemen, I need to sign off. But I agree with you on the louvers. Certain cars, and then not a personal choice of mine. Not a car I would drive if I were speccing it from the factory. But
I'll tell you though, if you had one of those, almost any of the Camaros from the second gen up, those big back windows like the Corvettes. I mean, if there was someone in the back, their head was cooking with the sun. The package area and the seat got destroyed from the sun. Yeah. So they really did have a practical purpose, but I think window tint works better.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Gentlemen, always a pleasure.
Yes, Carl. Good talking to you. Good,
Brian.
Good
Carl.
Yeah, Brian, good. Yeah, good luck on the Mustang. Love to hear how that all progresses. Keith, thank you. And Ray, always a pleasure. Great to be back on the show on Sunday. And so, just really appreciate all you guys, and we'll talk soon. All right.
It sounds great, Charles. Stay out of trouble now.
I will.
You'll get that Saturday afternoon text. I'll be getting you back on.
Yep.
So.
You know my phone number. 4 o'clock Saturday. Just shoot me a text and I'll be around.
Thanks, Carl. Thanks
all right, guys. Take it easy.
Okay.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye. All right. I guess since we're getting spam messages in the comments now, I guess we'll end this broadcast.
Spam messages? Oh, hey, cowards.
Yeah. We'll end this episode of Playing in Traffic.
What?
We'll be back next week with Lewis Lee. So thanks to Carl Anthony and, of course, Keith, Brian, Vince, and Jim, and myself, Ray, from Motormouth Radio. We'll be back next week and do it all over again. So have a good week. We'll see you then.
See you guys.